Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber, and our co-host today is Mark Schaffner, our CFO.
Good morning.
Zane is traveling, and we expect him back Thursday. So Mark will be filling in today, and Mark is very much up to speed on EVs, drives them, has been driving them for many years, and we want to encourage you to send us your questions and let us know where you're from when you send those questions. We will try to entertain all the ones that come through. And it looks like we should probably start with some questions that got backed up from the last show. Does that sound good?
Definitely does. Robert NHRA from TikTok starts off the questions this morning. In theory, is it possible to stack some extra battery packs in the trunk to give a way longer range?
Well, that's a good assumption because it's about extra batteries and extra energy storage. The challenge is if you get an aftermarket battery pack and you integrate it with the existing firmware, as you well know.
Yes.
And but if you can meet that challenge, then yes, the more batteries, the longer your distance, and of course it increases the weight, and you may not have room for passengers in the back seat once you add those additional batteries. Awesome. But that is how you do it.
Donnie Boy also has a question from TikTok. Do you folks offer repair training?
You know, we get asked that all the time, and we are going to be putting a frequently asked questions section on our website, and YouTube channel would probably be a good idea too. But the difficulty in us offering training is we just don't have the bandwidth currently to add those kinds of services. We're short-staffed often, and it would require people that can focus on that to do a good job with it. The good news is that in this disruptive technology, that will definitely be a business opportunity for companies in the aftermarket EV space. And it's not there yet that at least we can recommend any services or any schools, but it is coming, and it's going to be very necessary because we have so many mechanics that need to pivot and switch over to repairing EVs. And that's not going to happen organically by just simply experimenting, trying, or playing with EVs. There's going to be some formal education that will be vital.
Definitely not. You know, you've got mechanics that don't know the computer side of these electric vehicles, and yet you have the software people who are developing software that don't know the mechanical side. Finding people who have both of those skill sets is really, really difficult. And so that's one of the other reasons why it's hard to offer repair training at this point in time.
There's a TikTok question from James Hill. He asks, are you guys posting tech service bulletins for other technicians running into similar problems? We are not yet doing that on the public forums, but we do share some of that information with Tesla, especially regarding their first legacy vehicle, the Roadster, which is now aging. And we're seeing the effects of aging and sharing that with Tesla to help them design their newer vehicles or service their older vehicles. Having said that, though, there are some great sites emerging on Facebook, Tesla help sites that you can join, and it gives people that are working on these cars an opportunity to share their findings and their successes and their failures, or just simply ask questions. How do I fix this?
Yeah, there are definitely some good bulletins, and there are some good sites out there as well.
Pete, real quick, did you go into the background picture?
Oh, true. The background picture, yes. It is the sand dunes just west of Yuma, Arizona. And as Mark pointed out, this was the site of a Hollywood production.
Yeah, a lot of the filming for the original Star Wars movies back in the late 70s and early 80s that took place on the fictional planet of Tatooine were done out in the Yuma sand dunes. One of the more famous scenes, of course, is the rocket crash with the two robots, C-3PO and R2-D2, getting out, walking across the desert into the mountains. And that picture of the mountains and desert is from those Yuma sand dunes.
Whenever we go to California and take I-8 going to San Diego south, we always stop. It's huge. It goes on for miles, and there are some nice roads that you can take off and explore. I would recommend in summertime that you don't try barefoot, because when it's 115 in Arizona, that sand gets pretty hot. even flip-flops. Sometimes you get some spillover sand and your feet aren't that comfortable. But other than that, it is impressive how large this section of the U.S. is. It's massive. And there you can see a mountain behind us of pure, silty, beige sand called the sand dunes. It's kind of like the Sahara Desert. It's well worth visiting, and it's always a favorite stop when we take trips to Southern California. There was a question that came in from YouTube Shorts from Corper 8 Dystopia, and he was asking about our electric blue roadster that's in one of our Shorts videos. And the video that he's most likely referring to is where we explain how this 7,000-mile, pristine, bright electric blue roadster came into our possession. The short story is the car was bricked. It sat in a Ferrari dealership for 7 years or more. And the staff there forgot to charge it. When you do that with a Tesla Roadster, you sometimes run into a problem that's called bricking, which means that it will no longer accept the charge from the charge port door. And then these cars come to our service center to get recovered and the batteries repaired so they can continue to drive them. This particular car, we got notification early enough, but due to family issues, there was some distraction. And 6 months later, we talked again about the car, and it turns out by that time it was too late to do the recovery. So she said, the owner said, I'm going to sell it to Tesla. They are buying cars, and they are offering us a trade-in for a Model 3. Well, at the time, I knew why they were buying them, and they weren't quite, it wasn't public knowledge yet. They were buying them for parts, because parts for Roadsters are very difficult to get. And the problem with this car was not only was it pristine, 7,000 miles, still had a new car odor on the inside, beautiful car, but it was one of the last VINs ever made, VIN 1457. So it was the second to last VIN that was ever produced. And I just couldn't let that car get parted out. So we ended up rescuing it. We bought it. It's still brick, by the way. For a brief time, it became a test mule for us.
Yes.
We were actually doing some advanced testing to see how many cells we could cut in sheets before the performance in the car would be affected. And so we had it on the road for a brief period of time. But that's the story on the blue car. Everybody asks, is it for sale? No, it is a collectible car, and we'll continue to let it age like fine wine or cognac. All right, do we want to jump into our agenda and then we'll capture some more questions? Good morning. We have a visitor this morning, the automotive woman, an influencer on YouTube, is going to be doing a video with us, and we're looking forward to that. So the first news item that I have is we get a lot of questions often about supercharging. How cumbersome is it? How much time does it add to the trip? If we can throw an image up there, guys, and we want to see the image of all of the superchargers around the United States. And it's pretty impressive. I probably should have gotten a count here. I don't know how many dots there are, but I'm sure that if we Google that, we can find that.
And I believe there are close to 1,000 different superchargers now across the United States.
Is that right?
And overall, almost 5,000 supercharging ports.
Okay. And you can see there's, you'd be hard pressed to find any place where you don't have a supercharger. Of course, that always plays into range anxiety. Will I run out of juice while I'm on the road? Well, here's what one of the Quora readers actually said, who owns a Model S and does a lot of traveling. First of all, he's showing the supercharger map, and then he says when you're traveling, there's only one thing that you must do, and that is enter the destination, and he usually does it by voice control. You can talk to the car, in other words. I'm going to, you know, this location. What then occurs is, and can we bring up the next image, guys? It's the map, the supercharger map. The car actually calculates your distance, state of charge, anticipated power used per mile, and destination, and then it builds a supercharger route map to your destination. So you can see exactly where you'll be stopping.
It's a low resolution.
Yeah. I think it gets the point across hopefully there. And then from there, when you get close to your next supercharger location, it tells you, and then you go off to charge. It's that simple. So you don't have to, do your own maps, do your own calculations. They say that the average charge time is about 20 to 25 minutes on average. It's relatively cheap, about half the price of gasoline. And they say it's heaven for planners and people who like to control their trips.
I would totally agree with that. You know already, my wife and I drive a Model S. We have a Gruber Motors Model S, and we've taken several trips to Los Angeles from here in Phoenix. It's so easy to make that trip. A trip to Los Angeles from Phoenix is usually about 6 hours or so, 6.5 hours. We do it in about 7.5 to 8 hours with the charging. All that means is that when it's time to stop, we're stopping at a supercharger instead of a gas station. Instead of the 20 minutes to fill up with gas, maybe it's 30 to 35 minutes. The nice thing about these superchargers, they're always next to ice cream shops or restaurants or something like that. So if you have just a little bit of time to plan, it's very easy to do.
So you do stop a bit more often, but they had the foresight, like you said, to put them into infrastructure places where you can get a meal and watch a movie, whatever it is that you like to do. So that's the story on superchargers, and it's not really that difficult. All of the people that I know that drive EVs, I think range anxiety was one of the first concerns that we had as we began driving them. And after you become comfortable with them, you realize there's really no need for that kind of stress.
Oh, absolutely. Most cars or most trips that you take in a car are going to be 30 to 40 miles or less. And even when you have an EV that only has 100 miles, like the Nissan Leaf or the Kia Soul that I used to drive, range anxiety was rarely an issue for us. Usually you're going somewhere, even if you're going 25 or 30 miles, you're going somewhere where there's going to be a charger.
So it looks like we have another question from a YouTube audience member, Alex W. First question, he says, thoughts on Aptera changing their mind on adding quick charging? I wasn't aware that they were deviating from that. Most manufacturers are definitely including that because of the convenience and the speed during travel. Now, let's go back though and talk about that for a moment. Aptera is a three-wheeler. It's one of the EVs that's pretty progressive in that they have a solar panel roof. And you can get a 40-mile charge just by solar. So if the average commute in the U.S. is under 50 miles, essentially this car never would need to charge, because if you live in Arizona and you have constant sunshine, you're always going to have a full tank of gas.
Yes, that's absolutely right. Even in places that are a lot more cloudy, like Seattle or something like that, you can still get 20 to 30 miles a day on that Aptera charge just over solar. Plus, if you're like most EV owners and you have an Aptera, you're plugging into home, you're not quick charging, but you're charging overnight. So you plug it in, it charges overnight. In the morning, your battery is completely full. You have your 400 miles.
Very cool. So it looks like we've got a bunch of questions stacking up here. Let's entertain a few more of those. Instagram, InstaRay23. Good morning from Buffalo, New York. Good morning.
Good morning.
InstaRay. Looks like another Instagram viewer, AJR_16. Good morning from Canada. Well, our visitors today are from Canada as well. TikTok, Joe Sansoni, two asking the same. Why are you guys wearing sunglasses inside? And then he puts a smiley face up. Why are you guys wearing sunglasses? Just curious. Well, the sunglasses has become a huge issue and a huge visibility point for our podcasts and our videos. And we will eventually release details as to why sunglasses are always associated with our content, our videos, and our podcasts. But until that time, we're going to leave the suspense rest, and we will eventually share why this is taking place.
So on TikTok, Tesla21 asks, how can I get more range? I have a standard range car.
Well, the only way to do that is to change your battery. That is, of course, available with Teslas. You can go in the 100 kW cars up to 90 kW. So you can go for 40, 60, 70, 75, all the way up to 90. The reason they don't like you or don't allow you to go to 100 in one of those cars not built for the 100 kW, there are some structural changes, suspension changes, seat belt deployment and timing, even seat placement on that 100 kW car that Tesla makes. And they won't support it if you try to shoehorn a larger battery in that car than it was intended to have. There's a video, if anyone is interested, on our YouTube site that goes into much greater detail as to what the issues related to that are. All right.
And then on TikTok, Good Morning Gentleman from Donny Boy. He asks, are there any recommendations for being a Tesla dealership?
Well, Tesla isn't setting up dealerships. They wisely avoided that whole business strategy of a manufacturer making EVs or cars and then selling them through dealerships and allowing them to provide service. At the time, Tesla felt that they would get much better control of the process by selling cars directly, which of course made them run afoul with an organization called NADA, National Auto Dealers Association, which for many decades had successfully lobbied to prevent auto manufacturers from selling cars directly to end users. Many states at the time would not allow Tesla to not only sell their cars in that state, but to open service centers. Very powerful lobby, and eventually they've, all of the other EV manufacturers that are coming along now are chipping away at that and getting rid of that, that type of legislation. There was just, in fact, in the last podcast, we talked about a court case in Illinois. It was IADA, so the Illinois Auto Dealers Association sued Lucid and Rivian for selling their vehicles directly. And the court judgment finally came through, and Lucid and Rivian won, which of course makes a lot of sense. You know, we live in the information age. Those of you that buy things these days, yeah, it's fun to go to the mall and shop and browse and, you know, try clothes on or whatever. But the majority of people nowadays buy things online. I love Amazon. You know, to me it's fascinating that I can buy a $3 to $4 item, have it made in China, shipped over here, customs, more shipping, warehousing, have somebody pick it off the shelf, drive it out, and hand deliver it to me for $3 or $4. In 2 days. Yeah,
in 2 days.
It's all magic. It's all magic.
Well, and you know, that's a lot of what ended up driving Tesla's success early on. They couldn't open dealerships, they couldn't open service centers, so they just offered their cars online on the internet. People were so fascinated by the early cars that they bought them anyway. And that grassroots economic activity just has really been a game changer.
And that other brilliant move that they made was, since they were selling luxury cars, they put showrooms into the high-dollar, white-collar shopping malls. And that's where people go. People don't spend their Sunday afternoon at a car dealership. Most people dread going to a car dealership because of the experience they have there. Commission-breathing salespeople converging on you when you come in, and then the playing of let's make a deal, and all of the subterfuge that takes place from that, and then the hidden dealer costs. People enjoy going to malls, and if there's a bright, shiny object there, which Teslas or the other cars, Lucid now, many of them are there, they will educate themselves on what that is, and more than likely make a buy decision based on that.
Absolutely. From TikTok, Kenneth Salbert, what's popping? Making steak, breakfast tacos. Sounds good, Ken.
Yeah. TikTok, Joker, he says, are you outside? Maybe referring to the sunglasses. No, but we do have a lot of lights in here. Not quite as bright as sunshine, though. If you're fishing why we're wearing sunglasses, we're not revealing that yet.
Not yet. From TikTok, Let's Go Brandon, why are you so pro-EV? I bought a Tesla and then sold in 2 months.
Well, it sounds like Lesko had a bad experience. The primary reason that I personally am pro-EV is this planet cannot continue to survive with fossil fuel burners on the roads. you know, there is a lot of conjecture. Is global warming real? Is it a conspiracy? Is it, look at the weather patterns, look at the droughts, look at the hurricanes, you know, look at the temperature increases, look at the melting of the polar ice caps. If it's not global warming, then what is it? And there's some very smart people that are playing out the scenarios. If this continues, what is the outcome? So that is the fundamental primary reason that I personally am very sold on EVs. The second phase of that is, guess what? Oil, gas, coal is not a renewable resource. Coal will be gone in 114 years. Gas will be gone in 54 years. Oil will be gone in 50 years. Then what? We need a second act.
Yeah, we need something else. And, you know, for myself, it's very pragmatic. I love go home at night, plug in the car, in the morning, it's fueled up. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if I'm paying $3 a gallon or $5 a gallon because I'm not paying anything per gallon. I'm just taking care of the electricity. I know that the EVs are not 100% green. It takes fossil fuel energy right now to do a lot of that, to generate a lot of the electricity. I feel like I'm doing my part to be a little bit better toward the environment as a result, though. And, oh man, these EVs are fantastically fun to drive.
Yeah, and you know, I don't know if everyone remembers, but do you remember during COVID, we had a pandemic that was frightening. I mean, people actually, you know, put masks on and stayed inside their house. They wouldn't go outside. Mm-hmm. Do those of you that live in urban areas or large cities remember how clean the air got when we stopped taking fossil fuel burners out on the road at the magnitude that we are now? The air actually in Phoenix finally cleared up to the point where you could see South Mountain crystal clear from my house. It's like 20, 30 miles away.
It was amazing to see. From where I lived in the western Phoenix area, I could look out across the valley and see the Four Peaks almost 70 miles away, and it was just as clear as day.
Mm-hmm. And those of you that watch television and see the medical commercials, you know, respiratory problems, there has to be an impact from the damage that we're doing to the air that we're breathing. So there are a number of reasons, but looks like we got a few more questions here.
Yes, Abner Lobos 2001 says, hello from Belize.
Belize, wow, sounds like a great place to be living. YouTube, Phoenix EAA. A search shows 1,498 Supercharger sites in the U.S. in September 2022. Tesla said they're going to triple that in 2023. That's, by the way, information from Jiminy Stack, who is one of the godfathers here locally in the EV scene. He was into EVs before the rest of us were. I remember meeting him at a party 15 years ago, and we were talking about alternative energy a bit. And he's the only guy I know that carries an 18650 cell in his pocket to demonstrate and show the amount of energy that you can pack into a lithium-ion cell.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you very much, Jim, for that extra information. That was very useful. YouTube, LBJ, or Nai Hao, says hello. Hello from, looks like possibly from China.
Yeah. I don't read Chinese either, but it's ni hao. So those of you that know what that means, welcome, first of all, LBJ. Instagram, Enrique1991. Good morning from San Jose. Question. I have a 2013 P85 Plus. When supercharging, it only goes up to 75 kW and goes down from there as charging progresses. Is there a reason why I can't reach 150 kW charging? You know, there's a lot of, this is a common question. Tesla has allegedly trimmed the older Model S's or the older Teslas at the supercharger level. Now, none of that has been confirmed, but a lot of people are beginning to see that kind of degradation. We're not certain whether that is battery aging or whether that is an intentional effort on Tesla's part to make sure that these older legacy batteries do not get overcharged.
You know, I happen to have a 2012 Model S that I'm driving. I do see the same kind of thing. When I'm low on charge and go to a supercharger, it starts off and goes up to about 75 kilowatts. I did a little research on my own because I had kind of the same question. Why is it that my car won't charge at 150 kilowatts or 250 kilowatts? Part of it is simply the wiring and hardware inside the car. In 2013, the fastest superchargers were 75 kilowatt.
Good point.
As the charge on the battery gets higher, it gets closer to that 100%, the battery management system does automatically dial down the kilowatt hours that it will allow to come into the battery, simply because it doesn't want the battery to overheat. So it takes my car almost as long to go from 80% to 100% as it does to go from 20 to 80%.
Fascinating. I've got a news item here. Tesla Model Y surges to second most searched vehicle after price cuts. This is Edmunds. If you remember, during the price cuts, we weren't really sure what the impact of that would be, but it definitely met the objective. We had graphs up in the last podcast, and it showed inventory levels way up here, and suddenly there was a sharp drop. So more cars are being sold, and more cars are going into ownership. And so it was a very successful move on Tesla's part.
You know, this is going to be potentially really disruptive. In 2022, initial reports have said that the Model 3 was the third highest selling model of vehicle, whether electric or gas powered. And that for an electric vehicle to be that high on the list of best-selling cars was simply phenomenal. Seeing the price cuts on all of them, for the Model Y, for the Model 3 and everything, is going to continue to drive that and make Tesla one of the largest manufacturers by delivery in the world.
In the world, yeah, yeah. And what's also amazing is that in the span of just a decade, they have displaced many of the incumbents that used to reign and be the top sellers in certain categories.
Yes.
And but anyway, it was badly needed. All right, so we have a question on Instagram from Automotive Women, who's a visitor here today. Which OEM, in your opinion, is Tesla's biggest competitor in terms of technology? Can we throw up an image, guys? And it's the competitor image, and it is an article that was posted just this week showing which competitors they feel will be the ones that are chasing Tesla and have the biggest opportunity to displace them. It's in the
stock image?
yes, I think it's the stock image. Let's throw that one up. Actually,
There are definitely some big competitors that are coming out in different areas. Rivian is kind of taken the world by storm a little bit in the SUV area and the truck area. Lucid is
that's the one.
yeah, and Lucid is also working in the electric luxury vehicle range.
You know, the first thing I noticed about this report was there are two companies at the top of the list as the potential for the most able to displace or unseat Tesla. And these were companies that we thought were on the verge of bankruptcy. The fact that they made this list may indicate that things are turning around for them. Ford is obviously in the EV game now in a big way. Everyone's concern was, can any of these companies, these incumbents, pivot and change their production lines over to EV? And it's not just the production lines, the existing infrastructure. It's also the staff that they have, and which includes union-based staff, which is more expensive than non-union staff. But Ford and General Motors are at the top of the list, according to this article. Toyota, of course, has always been a very large automotive manufacturer. And then we have some others here that that people should recognize. NIO, Chinese company. BYD, very large Chinese company. And then, of course, Lucid and Fisker. And, you know, there's a lot of suspicion and fear about any of these companies going under. And whenever Lucid comes up, I know we talk about that often, you have to look at who's funding these companies and what their appetite for continued funding is. I mean, we're talking about the Saudi investment fund. These folks need a second act. They know that oil's going away, and EV is a logical choice for them to move into. They don't have money problems, and they are in a position where they can hang in there as long as they need with Lucid to make sure that they become profitable.
Absolutely. You know, they're not the only oil oil generating entity, as it were, that's making a huge investment in EV. I know, topic switch a little bit here, but Shell recently acquired Charging for the exact same reason. They're a big, profitable oil company, largest profits ever. Volta is a small startup EV charging infrastructure company that seemed like it was just a match made in heaven.
Mm-hmm. All right, a YouTube Shorts question from Paratosh P. Electricity is going to increase a lot in the future. Any thoughts? We have a video on this, and we were unsure too whether the grid would be able to support all of the EV infrastructure. And whenever we do a video, we have to do research. We have to, get all of the facts together so that we can come up with some opinions. It turns out that we were pleasantly surprised that there is enough grid infrastructure evolution and development where at this point it doesn't seem to be a concern that we'll be able to keep up. But one of the things, Jesse, did you have
Fusion.
something?
Electricity will be free in 10 years.
Yeah.
Fusion.
Yep. We are definitely pro-fusion and waiting for that to replace some of these other forms of energy storage. Now, talking about that though, I'm sorry, I lost my thought here.
That's okay. While we're, let's go back one question. There was one really good question that I didn't want to miss, and that is from Van Goat Wagon on TikTok. He says, "Good morning, smart people. Any new news on the hydrogen front?" We have the list of 7 vehicle stocks that are vying for Tesla's crown. Toyota makes a lot of news about how much they're trying to invest in hydrogen and hydrogen fuel cells. So I was a little surprised to see them on that list, actually.
Sure. Well, Elon has a very pointed opinion about hydrogen. He said it's foolish. It's it's a lot of plumbing. It's going in the opposite direction. We're trying to simplify things rather than create more complexities. It's kind of like this new Corvette that they came out with. It's a hybrid Corvette, and I have a strong opinion on that, guys. It's a Prius on steroids. What you've taken is all of the maintenance required for an ICE drivetrain and combined that with an electric drive train to gain what? Some extra horsepower. There's, I think there's an 8-cylinder engine in that. Is that right, Juliana?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, and it just seems like, granted.
V8,
yeah, there's a V8 in there. It's not going to make the noise that people are expecting from a wedge-shaped hypercar, right?
Right.
But it just seems like the wrong direction. So hydrogen, I think there are very few companies left working on it. And time will tell whether this is going to be viable. It certainly isn't now.
I don't know I'm not sure that it ever will be. It may end up becoming one of those historical things like the Betamax versus the VHS.
Yeah.
Betamax was the better technology. Didn't matter, it lost.
Right.
TikTok, Van Goat Wagon has another question here. It says, this may be a dumb question. What charges the 12-volt traditional battery in EVs?
DC to DC converter. Highly inefficient. You're taking 400 volts DC or 800 in Europe. You're changing it to AC, reducing the voltage through a transformer, changing it back to DC 12 volts, and that's what charges the traditional 12-volt battery. Now, the other question is, why do you have a 12-volt battery in an EV? Well, they can't run 400 volts to the headlights, the door locks. They would be killing mechanics, electrocuting them. Mm-hmm. So to make it safe for the mechanics, they stay with 12 volts. As Tessa pointed out, there are better voltages, though, for the low voltage devices, including 24, 36, and even 48 volts. 48 volts isn't going to kill you. 400 volts could. It is still a problem. It's a design challenge, and they haven't solved it well yet.
On YouTube Shorts, Paratosh P says the Porsche Taycan is rumored to have 1,000+ horsepower. It might be lighter as well. Will Porsche beat the Model S Plaid?
Well, time will tell. We'll see a lot of videos if that's the case. I think the latest video we saw was the
Isn't that an SUV?
The Lucid.
Yes, we had the Lucid Sapphire versus a Model S Plaid versus a Ducati motorcycle. And the Lucid put out almost 1,100 horsepower, if I remember correctly, on their Sapphire model. And the Lucid won.
It was an iconic experience at a quarter-mile track, or maybe longer, where they lined up a Lucid Sapphire, a Tesla Model S Plaid, a Bugatti Chiron. I mean, this was a $4.2 million car, and a sports bike. Now, the sports bike I understand because I drive a P90D Ludicrous when it's running, and at a light, sometimes one of these neon brightly colored sports bikes will pull up alongside me, and you can hear them revving, and they obviously want a challenge, and I'll give it to them if it's safe. The first 200 feet, I own the asphalt. I watch them in my side view mirror, their front wheels up in the air, and they're trying to get enough traction with that one wheel. Then they blow by me doing 90 to 140 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood, and that's not me. I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I already won.
Yeah, exactly.
So they had these 4 cars lined up, and that Lucid Sapphire beat every single one of them. It had to be terribly embarrassing for, for the rest of the players in that lineup. I mean, a Bugatti. Bugatti has a huge ego, by the way. They actually will take people off of their buy list because they haven't behaved in a certain fashion. Who was the latest one? It was one of the movie stars, Maverick, Top Gun.
Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise, yeah. They won't let him buy another Bugatti because at one point his girlfriend was in the car and he fumbled too long with the door latch trying to open it, and it made Bugatti embarrassed in that it demonstrated that their door latch wasn't very good. So he's actually banned from buying another Bugatti. Huh. But anyway, huge ego involved, and the fact that this car actually lost to a 4-door grocery getter sedan has to be the ultimate embarrassment.
Absolutely.
Hey, Pete, I'm going to pull this up so you guys can see it.
All right.
From the Porsche, their own website, it says it's 2.6 seconds, so it's still a little slower. And it is a sedan, it's not an SUV.
Okay, okay. So we're able to put some stuff up from the websites now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Excellent. All right. It looks like our questions have erased themselves, or do we have some coming?
We have answered all the questions that we have had so far.
Okay. Well, here's another news item which shocked me. The headline was, "We need a lot more electricians if we're going to electrify everything." Now, this is different than the grid being able to support the EVs. It's finding people to install the infrastructure so that we can charge EVs. And the case they make is, the U.S. has a shortage of electricians. First of all, people don't go into that trade anymore. A lot of young guys, people now are going into into social media because they can make a lot of money there. Why learn a trade when you can instantly, while in high school, make huge sums of money? And the trade business has really been going downhill for a number of years now. People don't want to do blue-collar type work necessarily anymore. So the shortage of electricians that can install this clean equipment like EV chargers, heat pumps, induction stove, there's a shortage. They give a description here. Somebody in San Francisco wanted to put some solar in, and he needed his panel updated, the circuit breaker panel. It took him a couple of months to even get someone to come out and quote it. One guy quoted it at $50,000, which is basically saying, I don't want your business, just go away and stop calling me. Mm-hmm. But apparently, electricians are beginning to become scarce, and with all of the conversion that is going on from solar to EV charging stations in garages, they're predicting that it's going to be tougher to find them. Prices are going up, and there's a shortage.
That's just it's amazing to me to see, but not necessarily surprising. Even newer houses will have 240 volts and about 200 amps come into the house for their service. Mm-hmm. If you go back 20 years, 100 to 150 amps was the standard for electrical service to a house. If you go back 40 years, it may be as little as 240 volts and 80 to 100 amps.
Sure.
So we're talking about these homes having to change a panel, an electrical panel that used to have 16 slots for fuses into maybe an electrical panel that has 48 slots. And you're right, it's been at least a generation that the young kids coming up out of high school, oh, you need to go to college, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And the trades, electricians or carpentry or things of that sort, have suffered as a result.
Sure. You know, you take your average house at 200 amps. Very few circuit breaker panels aren't fully loaded and at full capacity at 200 amps. You have a lot of stuff that's drawing current. You have your dryer, you have your kitchen range, you have all the outlets that are going in. And so when you buy an EV and you would like to charge with an 80 amp charger, where's that extra 80 amps going to come from? Well, it's not very easy to go to a 300 amp panel because the service delivery or the service entrance may be limited to 200 amps. Now you have a problem with the utility. You have to get them to drop a heavier, drop to your home, which is, that's an additional expense on top of that.
Absolutely, and that's going to become a huge issue, plus, again, getting the people to do it in the first place.
Sure.
And Pete,
Yeah.
on this same issue here, we've talked a lot in our past videos about there also being a massive shortage of EV mechanics, which are essentially electricians. You want to talk a little bit about one of the solutions you recommended, which is automation and AI?
Sure,
Come into
sure.
play?
You know, there's no secret that that this disruption currently in transportation is going to affect a lot of different industries. And the one that's going to be most impacted is service delivery. There's 780,000 mechanics in the United States. We prove this all the time. I can't hire a mechanic from a competing dealership and a low-tech auto shop, bring them into our environment and have them be proficient. They basically have to learn a whole set of new skills. The wrenching part is fine. You know, yeah, EVs have brakes, they have suspension, you know, they have some mechanical items that need to be repaired. But the rest of it requires software, electronics. And none of these skills are inherent in the existing pool of mechanics. So right now, the EV manufacturers that are starting to come up to speed are paying ridiculous sums of money for talented people that work in the EV space because they are so rare.
Right.
And they're poaching them from each other.
And they're poaching them from each other,
yeah.
exactly, yes, yes. So the only answer here is, because they're not going to be able to generate those skills quickly enough. There aren't any schools yet of any magnitude that are cranking out EV technicians, and there probably won't be for some time until they nail down their curriculum and they get qualified teachers to teach these programs.
Right.
So the only obvious solution to us is making the car smarter, moving AI into the cars, making them self-diagnosing, and now the skill level at the service centers can be reduced to module swapping. You have a checklist. Change this, if it doesn't work, change that, change this, and eventually you've got a fix. This is exactly what happened in the 70s in the last century and the 80s when computers became ubiquitous. Every company had to have a large mainframe, and there was a severe shortage of technicians. I know this because I was one of those mainframe repair guys, and we were in great demand. We were the resident wizards. We would walk in and a production facility would be shut down because the mainframe computer had quit. And when we walked in and worked on those that front panel and brought everything back up, people would bow. But the point here is there's a severe shortage, and the only way to do this, as back then, was to simplify the repair. And they would literally take people off of the secretarial pool, move them into vans, give them a whole bunch of parts with that checklist that I mentioned, and they would go out and just simply do process of elimination troubleshooting. And the worst part is all the parts that they changed that didn't resolve the problem, which were good, got thrown away. They couldn't reuse them. They were used at that point in time. The same will happen with cars, is my prediction. We're not going to have the skills necessary to repair these cars. And a scenario that I ran off for Juliana and her social media team yesterday was, the cars already talk to the mothership. Every Tesla vehicle is a node on the mothership in Fremont. And it knows where every car is, what it's doing, how fast it's going, how long it's sitting at that restaurant. It's not inconceivable that the car can collect diagnostic data about its functionality, report that back to mothership. Mothership then polls the service centers in that area. Do you have this part? And if so, let's get this processed. And then with self-driving, eventually, that works, that car a loaner car would be dispatched to the owner's house. The car would drive itself down to the service center, and then the process of elimination troubleshooting would start.
I could see that absolutely happening. You know, Tesla is kind of going that way with their toolbox suite of tools.
Right.
Because so many of their mechanics are in that stage right now where they know how to replace an entire module, but they have no idea what to do, nor have they been told or taught how to fix any kind of the components inside that module. So if there is a battery module that goes bad in a battery, they tell the person, you need a new battery. Because they're not trained to break into the battery and diagnose the individual module.
And of course, therein lies the aftermarket opportunity. While that car is under warranty, the owners will let them knock themselves out doing module swapping and changing parts that are good. As soon as that car is out of warranty, they're going to want to find a company that can find root cause, that can open up that box that is failing and do a component level repair rather than changing the whole product.
Absolutely, it's all dollars and cents at that point. We have a couple other questions from TikTok. Van Gogh Wagon, love the new kid co-host, great energy. I really appreciate the comment. I don't know that would call myself a kid per se.
Well, he's younger than me. Maybe that's why.
That's a good way to put it. I'm filling big shoes of Zane's, so I'm glad to be able to do it, and like having Zane here as well.
We've got a TikTok question from Don't Spy on Me China is his name. He said, someone told me that Tesla batteries are now sealed and can't be serviced. What we're talking about there is the Sandy Munro video where he got a Model Y battery, a structural battery pack with 4680 cells, and they tried to peel it open like a can of sardines, and they really ran into a lot of problems trying to get inside that battery to do any kind of reverse engineering and, of course, repairs, which they don't do. The jury's out as far as we're concerned. One of the things that makes aftermarket people like us successful is we take challenges like this and we innovate and we find ways to solve that problem.
Right.
So just because Sandy didn't find a way to repair that battery pack, that doesn't mean that we're in the same boat, and we need to figure out how to do it. That's part of our mission.
But not only that, that's not what he does. He doesn't repair batteries, right?
He's the tear-down titan, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, and we're the guys that just don't know how to take no for an answer. We don't know that something can't be done. Even if we can't do it the first time, we eventually figure it out. Plus, there are so few of those new style of batteries with the larger cells in them. I believe they've only been delivered maybe a couple of months and only in the Model Y at this point.
And if you look at the economics involved there, you've got a 1,000-pound battery pack, and typically when you have a failure, it'll be one component in that pack, just one. They don't all fail simultaneously. They're fairly new batteries. So why throw the whole pack away if it is one item that has failed? So it makes much more economic sense to repair. Of course, at the Tesla service centers, they can't do that. They don't have the facilities, the staff, or the experience to work inside any of this product. It's far more cost effective and economically feasible for them to do like they did with the computers in the 70s and 80s, is to just simply swap and toss.
Yes. Coreglass from YouTube asks, do you think the CyberTruck will have vehicle to grid? Also, do you think anyone will offer DC CCS domestic EV chargers for vehicle to grid?
You know, I think that the V2G concept has become so popular, especially with Ford's success with the F-150 Lightning, which is vehicle to home. Everybody has heard the story about the Hurricane Ian hitting, power being out for 4 days in some neighborhoods, and a Ford F-150 Lightning truck kept the freezer and the refrigerator and some of the heaters running in a home for up to 4 days. I can't imagine that anybody like Tesla is at this late in the game going to ignore V2G or V2H at least. It's so simple to do.
Yeah, from what I understand, you get the Ford Lightning, for example. If you're getting the Ford Lightning with a large enough battery to do V2H, they're also going to send out a technician to install that charger for V2H for you as part of the cost of the car too.
YouTube, Trucker Alistair, he's been with us before. Let's see, there he is. Good morning from Canada. Did any big EV Chinese companies ask you for selling or repairing their cars? No, they haven't come yet, and one of the predictions we also make is with the service delivery issues, they are eventually going to have to outsource to companies like us. Unfortunately, there aren't many companies like us that are experienced in the EV space. So at some point in time, we do expect the U.S. manufacturers to come to us, or even the foreign ones that have a large installed base here. And what they do with an outsourcing arrangement is they give us tools, software, some training, and we take care of warranty issues. And it may be low-tech warranty issues. You know, the door handles are failing like they do on the Model S. But yeah, we expect that. To date, though, no one has come to see us, but they will.
From TikTok, Tennessee Honey Jack asks, I had a great experience working for you during the backup power products era. Do you see your service umbrella being broader than Tesla?
Very much so, yes. Tennessee Honey Jack. So you worked for us at one point in time in the critical power business. I'd love to get the full name so that we know who you are, and we'll say hi again. But so the question is, do you see the service umbrella being broader than Tesla? I'm assuming that you're asking whether it will be larger than critical power, and the answer to that is yes. Critical power is business to business. Transportation is every single person that is trying to move around the planet. Much larger installed base, in other words.
Absolutely, and not only are we, right now we're all we can handle with Teslas. At some point in time, I can totally see us taking on, even if it was just the manufacturers here in Arizona, Nikola, Lucid, Electromechanica, and then possibly even the manufacturers that are domestic. Ford, GM, virtually every manufacturer is going to be making cars. It's just a matter of time, I think, before we get larger to be able to take on some of those other brands.
Sure. Van Goatwagon from TikTok. He says, my 14-year-old son loves cars and wants to get into the business. Which direction do we steer him in? I just had a tour come through a few days ago, and they brought a fine young man who is getting ready to graduate high school, and the question was, what kind of education should I get beyond high school that prepares me for a career in this field, in the EV field? He was thinking auto mechanic. I disagree. I think anybody needs to get an engineering degree with some software thrown in, and then you can start writing your own ticket. These cars, and not just the cars, but the rest of the technology that is heading our way from AI to robotics is all going to require some knowledge of electronics, components, test equipment, and that's where the future is, in my opinion. Even in cars, because you can apply all of those skills in the EVs. Anyone that's confused by that, take a look at our lab at Gruber Motor Company. There is as much electronics work that takes place as there is low-tech auto out on the floor with the brakes and suspension and tires and, you know, that sort of thing.
You know, and if kids want to work their way through college, as many kids do, if you really want to get into be an EV technician in that sense, take the engineering degree, go do your local auto shop and become a grease monkey for your side job to help put you through school. You're going to end up learning both. You'll learn the trade of the mechanics, which doesn't take the schooling you can actually get paid for, and then you can take the engineering degree as well.
Good point.
Maybe a couple more questions. We're at 58 minutes, though.
58 minutes, okay. All right. All right, Rashika Ratan from YouTube. Which courses are available in taking EV mechanic courses? You know, we don't know of any large educational institutions that are offering a comprehensive EV training plan yet. Tesla for a while was fooling around with an acronym that was called START, and they were encouraging community colleges and secular educational institutions to adopt EV programs, and they were supporting them. But I'm not sure that it ever got off the ground. But it is coming. It's going to be the next gold rush in education.
Absolutely. Well, from YouTube, Chris Barker asked, could Gruber Motors give a tutorial video on what an end user can safely use in the Tesla service menu, such as battery health check, et cetera, et cetera?
You know, my best answer to that is we have over 200 videos out there on YouTube now, and many of them are tutorial videos where we open up certain things and we show the repair processes. That's probably a good place to start, is review all of those videos and see if that answers the question.
We'll have more of those this year too. Tutorials to come.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we that gets back to the, are we able to or willing to provide education? And one of the easiest ways for us to do that at this point is to do the tutorial videos and post those out on YouTube or other mediums as well.
We have time for any more questions?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. We can
Okay.
keep going. We're at 1 hour now, though.
Well, let's do YouTube Shorts. Paratosh P. Electric cars' horsepower is going on and on like the Rimac. Isn't that a safety hazard for having 1,000 horsepower in a sedan that goes 0 to 60 in 2 seconds? Are future electric cars going to be dependent on horsepower?
You know, I think it will all stop once we start hitting G-forces where people black out. And we're headed in that direction. You know, the performance keeps on getting crazier and crazier. But yeah, the average person is not used to that kind of horsepower. There are safety issues, there are medical issues. Even myself, on a Sunday morning before I've had breakfast, with my P90D Ludicrous, that's a 0 to 60 in what, 2.8 seconds or something?
Yes.
I would get out on Thunderbird Road, of course no traffic by the time I'm up at 6 o'clock in the morning going to Dunkin' Donuts, and I would mash that pedal, and oftentimes I got queasy. It was that much torque and that much horsepower pinning me back in the seat. Now can you imagine a sub 2 second car? Anyway, there will probably be some safety issues that will be considered fairly soon as these EV manufacturers try to outdo themselves to get the fastest 0 to 60 time.
On YouTube Shorts, Andrew Barnes asked, will there be a cap on power to weight ratio for standard road vehicles?
I hope the government doesn't get involved in legislating any of this. That's my answer to that.
I'm hoping not. You know, it definitely is a new frontier. You've got vehicles that are anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 or 4,000 pounds heavier, so momentum is going to become even more of an issue as time goes on. We'll just have to see how that one goes, though.
From Instagram, DJVIP510, friend of the channel, he says, "The Groob, let's work. I can help get this engagement up." They used to call me that in high school, by the way, so I don't know if this is one of my old high school buddies, but what is amazing, by the way, is I've had 2 surprises doing these podcasts in the last 6 months. One of them was from a co-worker in 1966 when I had my first high school job in a radio shop. Jair Bassi from Brazil, soccer player, came to Rochester, heavy accent, played for the Rochester Lancers, but there wasn't enough pay in that, so he worked at the radio shop. He piped up a few weeks ago and he was asking about Teslas in Brazil. Then his wife pops in, she says, "I want you to know that that was Jair Bassi. He watches every single one of your podcasts." And I haven't seen him literally since 1966.
That is amazing.
Then I had my cousin in Australia. We were talking about, you know, various parts of the world. He piped up a few weeks ago, and he lives in Tasmania. He's a psychologist, retired now, and so we do get people that are watching these, and there's an occasional surprise like that. YouTube, this Disciple Medic, is Gruber hiring for auto tech students? It's funny you ask. We have postings out continuously. We are looking for another EV. We don't know what to call a mechanic or technician because it's a cross between the two. It's a hybrid. But yes, we do have openings, and for the right person, it would be a great job.
From YouTube, we have Scott Gruber. Hi, Scott. He says, "Hi, what is the best tire to use on an EV?"
You know, I don't know that. There's a Continental tire that has a sponge inside it, which I guess dampens the noise.
Yes, there are, in fact, in the last year or so, because I recently had tires changed on my Model S, Continental is one of a couple of tire makers that have come out with EV-specific tires. The rubber is a little bit more rigid. They have sponges inside to help dampen road noise, and the more rigid rubber is supposed to last a little bit longer because, of course, the EV cars tend to weigh 1,000 to 2,000 pounds more, and they end up wearing more on standard tires.
You know, despite tires sounding like a very low-tech item, there is an enormous amount of science in tires, which the racing world is fully aware of. You know, rolling resistance, you know, stickiness, all of those things. But yeah, I don't have an answer for you there. Googling it would probably get you batches of opinions. Michelin. Okay. All right, it looks like we're going to wrap up. Our social media team is telling us time's up. We, as always, we appreciate everyone joining us. There were some news items we didn't get to. We'll spill over to Thursday at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time. We'll be doing our next podcast this week. And if Zane isn't back, Mark will be joining me. And if you guys liked Mark's contribution, please let us know with the notes and we'll read them the next time around.
Great. Thank you very much for the time.